For coming today. My name is Sergeant Dorsey Riddle. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Conroe Police Department. The purpose of today's press conference is to provide information regarding the serious fatality accident that occurred on Sunday afternoon in which the family was killed and the two teenagers were injured. We have several individuals here to talk to you today. The first is Tyler Dunman. He's the Special Crimes Bureau Chief for the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. We have District Attorney Brett Ligon. And we have Joseph Arabit with the Drug Enforcement Agency, Special Agent in charge. I would just ask that the media hold their questions until each of the individuals had the opportunity to speak, and we'll be glad to provide answers at the end of that. Tyler.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We just want to take a step back and just send our condolences to the Settlemeyer family for the pain and the things that they're going through right now with the loss of a whole family, parents and two kids. And so it's been a very tragic couple of days. It started on Sunday when we responded to a 4-person fatality crash on Highway 105 here in Conroe. And as part of that investigation, we obtained evidence from that scene that led us to where we are today, which is with the arrest, or last night, of Dr. Soccer here in the Woodlands. But in obtaining evidence at the scene of the crash that day, we discovered that Ronald Cooper was in possession of a controlled substance, prescription medication that he had, oxycodone and Valium. And in looking into that and bringing in our team with the DEA, Precinct 2 Constable's Office, Homeland Security, and of course Conroe Police Department, we were able to look very quickly at the doctor that was prescribing that medication. This doctor operated a clinic and a pharmacy down on 242 here in Montgomery County. And for some period of time, the DEA and Conroe PD and other agencies had been looking at this doctor for a number of reasons. And so when we started to look at that, we discovered very quickly that we had several violations that he had committed in the scope of his job as a doctor. And that's where we zeroed in for the purposes of these events. Basically, what we found is that the doctor had been prescribing medication without checking a public database that doctors have access to. This database is to prevent people from doctor shopping, and it requires doctors to check this database to see if this patient has been to other doctors and been prescribed certain pain medication. And Dr. Soccer did not do that. That allowed us probable cause for a search warrant as well as other documentation we were looking for relative to the Ronald Cooper case. And as part of that, we were able to go into his pharmacy, his office there in the Woodlands, and obtain a lot more documentation and other additional evidence relative to the crash and to the other issues, the concerns that we had with overprescribing medication. So when we got there, we executed a search warrant on Monday night at 8 p.m. At his office, his pharmacy, down on 242 in Montgomery County. We obtained multiple boxes of documents, computers, electronic equipment, and other devices. And with that, we were able to put together the charges for his arrest, which occurred last night. And those charges include possession of a controlled substance. We discovered that the doctor was in possession of certain narcotics that he had placed throughout his office, which is illegal. A doctor cannot possess controlled substances without a prescription, just like anyone else. As part of that, because of his employment as a doctor, he's committing what we call fraud, basically diverting the prescription medication for either his own personal use or for some other use without a prescription. We also charged him and found documentation that he was signing script pads or prescription pads without providing any type of direction on what should be filled. And so his staff and other employees at his office were basically getting to fill in the substance, the controlled substance that was going to be prescribed, and send that to pharmacies without him actually approving that or checking off on that. Very dangerous activity, and those are the charges that he was arrested for. It ended up being 10 counts. The possession charges are second-degree felonies in the state of Texas. The range of punishment is 2 to 10 years, as well as the fraud counts and the diversion counts, which in the state of Texas are state jail felonies. So that's the chain of events. He was arrested yesterday evening when meeting with DEA agents and Conroe Police Department officers. He was arrested without incident. He was booked into the Montgomery County Jail last night. And as of this point, I know that he has made his bond, which was roughly $50,000 on those charges. So at this point, I'd like to just have District Attorney Brett Ligon make a few comments.
Thank you, Tyler. And just to keep it brief, I know that you are going to have your questions, but just kind of summarize what's going on. We had the quadruple fatality on Sunday. Tyler responded as part of our vehicular crimes task force. So from that investigation is what led to the arrest of the striking vehicle, Mr. Reynolds. And one thing we need to address right now is he was arrested for intoxicated manslaughter. And I know that there was talk within the blogosphere about alcohol being involved. However, the definition for intoxication is any loss of your normal physical or mental capabilities due to the introduction of either alcohol or drugs or a combination thereof. And so what we have, the allegation is that we have a person who's intoxicated from narcotics. And then we have to further distinguish the difference between legal narcotics obtained from a prescription versus illegal narcotics. The law doesn't make a distinction between whether or not you're getting the prescription or the drugs legally or illegally. If you're intoxicated and you're operating a motor vehicle in the state of Texas, particularly here in Montgomery County, you're going to be held responsible for your actions. And of course, in this case, it resulted in the death of 4 people, the Cedarmeyer family. And so you have to remember, a prescription is for medical treatment. It is not a license to drive. So from there, as part of that investigation, is what leads to the arrest of Dr. Socker. And of course, anybody who's going to be responsible for the consequences, I think the common street name is a pill mill. So if you're wondering what kind of case this is, it's a pill mill case. We've arrested a doctor who's peddling poison here to people in Montgomery County, not only in this county, but in other counties. That explains why the DEA is involved. And so what we constantly have to remember is the mission of the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office is to keep people safe, is to keep the community safe. And of course, we've taken a very aggressive stance on DWI, intox manslaughters. And so whether or not you've become intoxicated from an illegal substance or an illegal substance, you're still going to bear those consequences. But yet, now you take another tragedy. In the last calendar year, we've had 64 people in Montgomery County who overdose. Now, these are the numbers coming from the medical examiner's office. Over half of those were from prescribed medications. So does everybody get it? Of the 64 people who've died in this county from overdoses, half of them were from an illegal substance, and the other half were from legal substances. People, it's time. You got to start taking care of yourselves, look for your family, look for your children. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Arabit from the DEA. He's the special agent in charge. He'll talk to you a little bit. Remember, this is an ongoing investigation, and so if there's things that you ask me I can't answer, it's not because I don't want to, because I love every single one of y'all, but it's the fact that there's some things we just can't get into.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. It's spelled A-R-A-B-I-T. Folks, the circle of addiction that we struggle with as Americans oftentimes involves opiate-based pharmaceutical drugs. Since 1999, overdose deaths as a result of opiate pharmaceuticals have quadrupled. In 2013, there were over 22,000 overdose deaths related to prescription drugs. 46 people a day are dying as a result of prescription drugs. There are a number of different factors that contribute to these overdose deaths. Obviously, one of the factors is doctors that are prescribing illegally. And as the district attorney and the chief prosecutor said, we're not going to get into the details of the case today, but that is a big problem. Pill mills in this community are a big problem. A bigger problem is that pharmaceutical drug abuse is leading to heroin abuse in our country. We have a heroin abuse epidemic in our country. Last year, we lost 8,200 people to heroin overdoses. That is a direct result of prescription drug abuse. Heroin is cheaper and easier to obtain than pharmaceutical drugs. And so one problem feeds right into the other. From the perspective of the Drug Enforcement Administration, we are committed to tackling this problem. We do this nationwide through our tactical diversion squads. We have one of those squads assigned here in Houston. We work very, very closely with our state and local partners to include the Conroe Police Department, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, and many other agencies in this community. But the point that I want to make, folks, is that pharmaceutical drug abuse is a huge problem in our country. Pharmaceutical drugs, prescription drugs, will kill if they're not properly administered and folks don't follow the directions that go along with the prescription. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Why were you investigating him in 2014? What has he been under investigation for?
He's been under investigation for his involvement with pill mills, for his involvement with prescribing opiate pharmaceuticals.
According to the affidavit, Mr. Harris, the DEA had identified, you've been investigating since 2014, since last year, you had identified this pill mill, as you said. Why was he still in business?
These are very, that's a very good question. Thank you for the question. These are very, very complex cases. Very, very complex cases that take just days and months, oftentimes even years to investigate. We're dealing with doctors here, unlike a drug trafficker that is dispensing heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine, that we can go up and we can watch the transaction and take him into custody. As we're investigating doctors, it becomes a lot more complex, and the investigation is more protracted.
And I'd just like to say that, Phil, I applaud the DEA for being as proactive as they were on this case, because if it weren't for the intelligence they had and all the evidence that they had collected and were analyzing at the time that the crash occurred on Sunday, we would not have been able to act as quickly as we were. So they've done an outstanding job. It does take time. It's very complicated, probably one of the most complicated type of cases that these pill mill cases are. We're dealing with doctors. They know the loopholes. They know how to play the system. It takes time, and luckily they had a good amount of intelligence that they were able to provide us on Sunday. We were able to move very quickly and get this doctor arrested.
Is he shut down now completely?
Well, he is not. He is still a licensed doctor, and I'm sure that the medical board will have something to say about that when the dust settles. But at this point, he has just been charged with our state level offenses, and that's where we are.
What will happen to the other doctors working under his clinic and pharmacy, also prescribing medicine, especially to this 60-year-old man on Sunday?
I didn't catch your first part of your question.
What
What will happen?
Yeah,
It's a pending investigation. It's an active investigation. We've identified him as the leader of this particular facility. That's the arrest that we made based on the evidence at this point, but it is continuing.
So at this point, they can stay open?
There's nothing that's preventing them from operating at this point.
You got to remember, the slice that the DA takes on and law enforcement takes on is, we recognize the crime, there's PC, then you make the arrest, and so we've got the charges. And so the medical board is the one who licensed him. It'd be, for example, me arresting you as a KHOU 11 reporter for a DWI. It doesn't mean that KHOU is going to fire you. That's up to you and your boss. And so in this case, your boss would be the medical board. It's up for us to do our job. It's up for the community of Montgomery County to do their job. Now, whether or not the licensing board for the doctor and for the clinic continues to let him operate, those are two completely different deals. So we're gonna handle what we can here in Montgomery County, which is the prosecution.
Would you encourage people to continue seeking treatment from him or anyone at
Well,
the facility?
I think people should use common sense, and part of that is understanding the doctor that you're being treated by, understanding the ethical rules that doctors follow. If it's someone you're comfortable with seeing, then continue to see him. But in this particular case, I would ask individuals who may have evidence, who have seen this doctor, who have been former employees at this facility or other facilities, to reach out to us and give us a call. You can call the district attorney's office. We'd be happy to take your calls and meet with you to understand the gravity of this case.
Can you link this to the deaths of these people? Will there be a murder like in Michael Jackson? Will there be any connection? What is the connection to the deaths? There's a mention of an overdose death linked to this doctor, and there's also a mention of 7 people that overdosed that didn't die, and now there's 4 people that died in this tragedy. Will there be a murder charge or some manslaughter charge or something?
I can speak to that. The person who caused the death of this family, his name is Ronald Cooper. That's the allegation. That's what he's been charged with at this point. And the evidence will show that when we get to trial on that case. This doctor is not being charged for the death of those 4 people. We have to take personal responsibility. It's no different than a bar situation where you charge the owner of a bar with murder for someone committing DWI. It falls on the person who's operating the vehicle. Now, this is an investigation that arose from that based on the evidence at the scene and the situation that Ronald Cooper was in with the narcotics he was taking. So he's being charged, the doctor's been charged with the offenses that are relative to what he does. It just so happens that it plays into the epidemic that's been mentioned, which is people are abusing prescription medication. He's not the first person that we've caught doing that. He won't be the last, unfortunately. But this is part of the solution, which is letting doctors know that we're here.
And Cindy, your analogy is close, but it's not exactly there. If you remember the doctor in California, and gosh, I hate to talk about California law because this is Texas, thank God, but that doctor had prescribed the medication personally to Mr. Jackson, the propofol. Mr. Jackson died as a direct result of those drugs being administered to him, so there wasn't a secondary link in here. And so here we have a Cedarmeyer family who dies from an accident, and we have a doctor who's more remote in the chain. And so, as Tyler's indicated, now you got to remember, today is Thursday. This was on Sunday. And since Sunday, we've arrested the person involved with the accident. The DEA has done an awesome job of reaching out to us. We've executed a search warrant that kept our office up till 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 separate facilities, and arrested the doctor. Now, I know that on some of the crime scene shows, you can get the wrap up in an hour, but this is real life. It's going to take us a little bit longer.
Will there be conspiracy? There's mention in there about conspiracy, but this, you know, like he was a drug lord leading this drug thing and money laundering. What about that?
I'd say stay tuned.
Right. It's too early to tell what other, if any, charges may come from this investigation.
Let me make sure I'm reading, that I'm clear on this too, because it sounds like in the affidavit saying that 7 patients from that clinic have died from overdoses, or is it 1 patient, 7 patients have overdosed and 1 patient dead?
I can tell you in our county there have been several who have died. The exact number I don't know as a result of overdoses. And in the course of investigating those, there have been ties to this particular doctor. Now, what the status of that situation is and the exact details, we don't have that at this time. That's things we're working on.
In the search warrant, it states that 1 person died of an overdose that was linked to this doctor, and that there were 7 other overdoses linked to this doctor. Were those overdoses deaths?
Yes.
They were.
So if those overdoses were deaths, then what was the difference between those deaths and then this family's death that led to the search warrant and led to the arrest warrant?
You've got on the legal side, you've got an intervening causation factor. And so what you have is Mr. Reynolds, who was under the ingestion, and now this is just, I'm sorry, Mr. Cooper. It's Chief Reynolds who's telling me the wrong name. But what you have is a break in the causation there. And so you've got a guy who's driving the vehicle, striking the vehicle, and pushes him in front of oncoming traffic. And so as opposed to a doctor prescribing medication and somebody overdosing. And so it is part of the investigation, and I know that y'all want to get there. However, you know, it's a little bit early in the investigation. There may be additional charges that are filed. But today's the point to address to the public, hey, you know, prescription or non-prescription, you can still be intoxicated, whether it's alcohol or drugs. And as far as pill mill cases are concerned, this investigation led us directly to this doctor's door.
Tyler, it sounds like on the scene, some good police work. What tipped you off at the scene to tie Dr. Socker in? Was it type of drug, quantity of drug, mixture of drug? What was it?
I can't get too specific, but yes, the Conroe Police Department, their crime scene folks came onto the scene to assist us. They did an outstanding job of preserving evidence, gathering evidence, and part of that, and part of looking at Mr. Cooper's vehicle and examining, they did discover prescription bottles that had been filled as recently as September 18th by this particular doctor, and that's what got us going right away on that. So they did an outstanding job of uncovering that for us and allowing us to pursue this avenue. Yes, ma'am.
Is this the first time this doctor faces charges, or has he faced charges before from the previous investigations?
From my understanding, it is. I don't know. We don't have any information on that.
Just a couple different points before I forget to address these points. Someone asked about what was going to happen with the doctor's ability to prescribe. We're in the process, as we speak, of revoking his ability, his DEA registration number. And with regard to the other two doctors mentioned in the affidavit, we are also investigating those two doctors, and they are all under the federal investigation. You've heard the chief prosecutor and the DA talk about what's going on in Montgomery County, and obviously that's what we're here to talk about today. But there's also a federal investigation that is ongoing that I can't get into any of the details, but just know that it is ongoing. And the most important point to take away from this is that the doctor's ability to prescribe is in the process of being revoked as we speak here.
Is the woman mentioned there, is that his wife? The other doctor, the female doctor, I assume that is his wife?
I don't know that.
I don't know how
I
they're
don't know
related.
that.
Okay, we appreciate everybody's questions. At this time, we cannot get out any further information. We're going to end the press conference here. We appreciate everybody's time and attention to this matter, and hopefully we'll have some follow-up at a later time. So thank you.
All right, Tyler, tell me the diversion charge. Explain it.
Well, there's two separate diversion type charges that have been filed. One of them involves the doctor being in his official capacity. Not only does he commit possession of a controlled substance when he possesses drugs, just like any other person, but because of his job as a doctor, because of the access he has to drugs, he also is committing an offense of diversion, which means that he is either using the drugs for his own personal use, or it's alleged that he is diverting them to someone else who is taking them without a valid prescription. Okay, that's one of the diverged situations. The second one has to do with a fraud diversion, which is he is signing prescription pads without meeting with the patient, without designating what the drug is going to be prescribed. That allows his staff or whoever who are not doctors to presumably write in whatever they want, give it to the person who they can go fill it because it's got a doctor's signature on it. And you can understand the dangers of that. No one is checking to see whether the person is already being prescribed those types of drugs or whether they're going to be used for a valid medical purpose. So that's the second fraud diversion type charge. It's very complicated, but those are the ones that have been filed.
What about seizures of any one of these businesses or any equipment or anything like that?
Yeah, our office
I mean,
is
as far as asset type
yeah, our office is working on the asset forfeiture of bank accounts and property, just like we always do. That's in progress, and it takes some time to complete.
Him, I mean, he's bonded out already.
Right.
I mean, can he just take off and run? The bond was only like $45,000, I think it was.
Well, the judge was very, very smartly put some conditions in that are relative to his ability to leave, fly out of the country, and based upon what's been put into place by this judge and by the federal government, I feel comfortable with the fact that he made bond. It happens, as you know, and so we will deal with those issues as they come.
Now, federal charge, if he comes up on federal charges, will state charges still hold?
Yes, we have the ability to pursue our state charges regardless of what the federal government does in this case. And I think it's important that we focus on the real travesty in this case. It has to do with people who make bad decisions when getting behind the wheel of a motor vehicle and drive. Whether they're getting prescriptions legally or illegally, when you decide to drive after taking those prescriptions, we see a result like is what happens on on Sunday. And that's what's scary about this case, and that's why we're doing what we're doing to try to make a difference.